Hi, Erin. Welcome to the Surthriving podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited you're here too. And to bring listeners up to speed with a little bit of background, we're going to talk about it, of course, but Erin is a full time artist and illustrator. And my sister and I actually gifted my parents a illustration of her, of our childhood house that is hanging in their home still, that they absolutely loved. And I just really love Erin's story of going to art full time. So I'm really excited to dig into this and having you here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so fun to do a full circle moment. It was awesome.
Yeah. And I think it will really settle well with like my population because the 30 somethings, I think people feel a little bit lost. Their careers are all over the place. And I was talking to a friend recently who's like, you pick a major in college and you think that you just have to stick to it and that's your life. And
Yeah.
I think you're a good example of that. It's not your life and that you
Yes.
can pivot.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Or I actually was a drawing and painting major in college and decided to completely spend 10 years not doing that and then reverted back. So you can do, the paths are definitely changing all the time.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So kind of going into the whole path, can you tell us just like how you who Erin is and how you ended up starting in corporate and then just going
Yes.
into art full time?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I have been drawing and painting my whole life since I was a toddler. And it's something that I just really loved and has always been an escape for me and something that I really enjoy and just comes naturally to me. So it just kind of worked out that, when thinking of that college major, thinking what I want to do, it was like, oh, it seemed natural in that moment to like, oh, I'll go to college for drawing and painting. But then when I was in college, I think it was twofold of like a lack of confidence in myself that I could make life as an artist work. And at the time, like I just didn't see a job or a path that made sense to me, like as an artist, or that I could see myself doing. And I just kind of had this belief that artists don't make any money. And college was fun, but like I needed to kind of figure something out of a more serious career. And so I was also interested in health and wellness, and I went and got my master's in health promotion management. I spent almost a decade in the corporate field doing wellness programming and program management. And then it kind of was one of those things where it just felt like things weren't clicking. And I was like, oh, well, I'm creative. Like maybe I'll do marketing. So I got a marketing certificate and tried out a marketing. I was the director of marketing for an auto company. And that's just, I mean, anyone that knows me knows like you are not into automobiles. Like, what are you doing kind of thing? So my 20s are very much an era of like, uh, finding out what you want to do by trying all of the wrong things, I would say. And definitely to your intro, I felt very lost. I wasn't on a lot of my friends had found the job right after college. They were happy with their job, found the husband, got married, were starting to have kids. And I just felt very lost in my late 20s and even into my 30s, of like, what am I supposed to do? So being able to do art, I started it as like side hustle. I've always kind of kept up with it, but starting to sell my work and build that confidence, that was the kicker for me. Of like, I really just needed that little boost and to believe in myself before I was like, okay, like I can actually pursue this as a career.
Yeah, that's so important. I love how you touched on confidence. There's something in your 20s where you have it just enough, but not enough to rip the band-aid off.
Right.
And yeah, and it sounds like that. I think sometimes confidence just comes from experience. And I think that's why when women, especially enter their 30s, there's this kind of pulling your head out of the sand, as I describe it, how I've personally experienced it. You're like, wait a second, I know who I am and I don't know everything, but I know that I've
Right.
made it through all of my bad days.
Yes.
And I can still be here doing this, so I might as well try. So I do want to ask you, Erin, you can answer this in any way that you feel comfortable. Are you surviving or thriving?
I would say right now I am on the brink of thriving. I am actually pregnant, and so I'm going going into
Yay!
my second trimester, so we're very excited about that. But unfortunately for me, the first trimester, this is now my second child. So in both pregnancies has been pretty horrible. I've been very sick,
Oh,
and that's just the unfortunate part of, working for yourself is there isn't someone to pick up the slack like when you're not feeling good. So when you're consistently not feeling good for, a good chunk of weeks, you are in survival mode. So I have been surviving, and right now I feel like we're finally getting into thriving.
that's amazing. And I'm so happy for you, and congratulations to you and your family. I'm so
Thank you.
excited to see the baby in the next couple of months, and the name and everything. But I really appreciate you saying that you're on the brink of it. I had another guest share a similar answer, and that it's a very real thing, right? There can be phases of your life where you're like, these 6 months, I am just not doing well. But then you enter a phase where you really can pivot. And I think it just shows the beauty of life that everything can exist kind of at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I do feel like a lot of the times, like when we're in survival mode, not necessarily in my case this time, but I do have plenty of moments that where I felt so in survival, and it's almost like the building blocks. Like you're like, okay, I just got to get through this. I just got to get through this, and then it'll all come together. Um, and I do definitely feel like that's how the year has started. It's not
Yeah.
started off of the we'll hit the new year running. Like I've been in bed and sick to my stomach for most of
Oh,
the start of the year. But it's like, okay, got through that and we're ready to thrive. So definitely on the
yeah.
brink.
We're ready to thrive. I love that. So, speaking of surviving and thriving in relation to you leaving, we'll call it corporate America for the purpose of this podcast, corporate America to going into full time illustration, was there a catalyst moment or point that you were like, I just need to rip the band aid off and do this? And what did that like look like?
I would say it was twofold. So I actually, it's so funny because this is so insignificant to, it was my cousin, Matt, and he will think absolutely nothing of this because we were at my pop-pop's house for like some holiday gathering, and I was in my corporate wellness job and like trying to sound important at whatever had happened that I was doing. And I was like telling my pop-up some thing that had happened at work, and my cousin just like so nonchalantly was just like, oh, I thought you were like really good at art, and like literally left. Like it was the most casual comment top of his mind, but it just planted that seed of like, what the heck am I doing? Like it was just as if someone could like see through the BS of what I was trying to like, I don't know, show off or say or
Yeah.
something. And it just kind of planted that seed of like, what are you doing? And it like, you are good at art, and kind of having someone that I have a very supportive family and my husband is extremely supportive of me. But I think it was just, it hit a little different coming from someone that had known me my whole life. Like we're not super close, and just kind of having someone call out that like they're not getting anything back. Like he's not trying to like gas me up or like, it was just top of mind. Like he's like, I thought you were good at art. Like weird. And just didn't think anything else of it. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
wait a second.
Yeah.
Like it just made me think. And so that was a few years before I actually left my job, but it really did
Okay.
kind of plant the seed of like, maybe like this is why things don't feel right. So then I think like the more evident or like stronger pushes I would say was I just was in when I was in the marketing job, I was the marketing director for an auto group, and it really was a great way for me to I had so much exposure to all different avenues of marketing. They did, digital billboards, they did print, they really did everything, and I got to kind of have experience in a lot of that, which was so valuable, but it just was like burning me out. Like I was like,
Yeah.
like cars aren't my thing, but even not even necessarily the subject matter. I don't know, something just felt off of it, just wasn't jiving. It didn't feel natural, or it just didn't feel right. And then at that same time, I was getting a lot more traction on my Etsy shop and with my bridal gifts and things like that. So it kind of was just a twofold like, okay, this is actually like moving somewhere. Like I think I could actually, if I put more time into it, grow it into something beneficial. And
Hmm.
this job just really is kind of draining me. So why don't we go and do that? And I will say, because I was living with my fiance and like we had a home together. Like I felt very secure and that was really important to me. So that also helped. Like I don't want to give the wrong impression of I
Yeah.
just like, had a lot of monthly bills that I was solely responsible for and just left my job, because that I give so much credit to someone that decides to do that completely on their own. So I did have a really strong, my husband has always been super supportive of me diving into this career and really kind of taking control of it and making it my own. So that was a huge help, and his support really helped push me too and give me that confidence. But yeah, I would say it was just kind of a lot of building moments where it all just kind of came to a head and it was like, all right, you know what, now's the time.
It sounds like intuition, kind of, you
Yeah.
just couldn't ignore anymore. And there's a part of you that I think any listener probably listening has had that feeling. You're like, something just does not feel right. Your gut is usually always right, or just always right. Your gut is always right. And so don't ignore it. Don't ignore that like intuition or whatever it may look like, whether it's leaving a job to do a passion project or just doing something different, very minor in your life. That intuition is a very real voice. And I think sometimes society forces us to ignore it, just because maybe we're too scared, or fear of judgment, or what people are going to say or think, or failure, I think is a really big one. But you're obviously an example that you can change paths. So was the Etsy shop, like, were you doing that while you were still working? Like, how active was that before you kind of really took it full time?
Yeah, so I was probably doing that for about 2 years before I did full time. So when I moved to Center City, Philly, that was a really big moment for me just in moving to digital illustration. Like I didn't have an iPad, I didn't really play around with it at all, but I lived in a tiny, tiny Center City apartment by myself, and I just didn't have the room to like set up a canvas or really like sprawl out with paints. So there was an Apple store down the street, and I decided, all right, like we'll play around with this and just kind of have some fun. So I started using the app like Procreate and doing a lot of like digital illustrations and drawings. And at that point, like it was becoming more popular to post like business and art stuff on Instagram. So I started sharing that a
Mhm.
bit more. And it was also around the time when a lot of my friends were getting engaged and planning their own weddings.
Oh,
So my friend Brittany, she actually asked me to do a mother of the bride gift for her to give her mom. And that was like the first time I had done something like that. And it was really cool and set off the whole trajectory of doing the bridal gifts, because I was like, oh, this is actually like really sweet and something that I enjoy doing. And I enjoyed the bridal space. I love weddings and, drawing the different dresses. And that was definitely a great way for me to get started, of my friends kind of having weddings and seeing what I'm doing and kind of asking me to do little projects for them that fit in with their wedding. And then it gave me something to be able to market to other
yeah.
people. And that's how I brought it, started the Etsy shop and kind of figured that out. And then the power of social media and like brides that I worked for, that I did pieces for, posting like their moms reacting to my drawings and that going viral. Like, and then once I started gaining more traction, I started getting more and more orders. And then I was probably making a dual salary for like 3 months before I was like, okay, like I can go off of this and like live off this money and,
Wow.
really pursue it. So security is super important to me. That leads into confidence. And that's probably my own thing of like, I want to be able to make my own money. And I was a little too scared of, if I didn't have the orders coming in, to just like quit and pursue it.
Yeah.
I wish I had the confidence a little earlier to do it, but hindsight's 2020. But I definitely had evidence that I could be successful and there was interest in what I was doing before I quit. And then once I did that, I started doing live weddings and taking it into different avenues. And it's just kind of grown from there, which has been really cool.
Yeah, and it's a great example about how you can take one thing and not have to like bite off too many different avenues at once, and start with like just illustration or whatever it may be, and then branch into like a wider thing once you have like the bandwidth or skill set or whatever it is, because I think sometimes people try to like bite off more than they can chew, and so
Yeah.
it sounds like you really started with just like Mother of the Bride illustrations, and then now I know you do like live paintings and all of that stuff.
Yeah. No, I did definitely start really small and kind of just focus on what was working. And then I was like, all right, I can do this. And it was for a while, like I was just kind of taking whatever anyone threw at me, and it was like I would do it for dirt cheap. And I'm like, here, like just give me the experience, give me the, clientele, like all that stuff. That was actually, the pricing has been a big learning curve for me as far as figuring that out, and how to grow that and really like price things where I'm valuing myself and not just, to bring people in the door. So that was a good kind of catalyst, I would say.
Yeah, that was actually going to be like my next question, that what's the biggest like learning curve? So how did you start with the whole financial aspect of it, and how has that changed to like where you are now?
Yeah, pricing was super, it still is one of the harder things for me, just because learning with my experience, and then also like in the markets that I'm in, really learning how to value my time. Because at first I was like, well, it only cost me XYZ to get out the illustrations. Like I wasn't valuing all the work that I was doing to market it, to actually draw the illustration, to package them, mail them. Like I'm doing the whole business, and I needed to keep that in mind when pricing things, because since a lot of my work is custom, my most valuable asset is my time. So that was a big just realization for me, I guess, of like, okay, especially now that I'm a mom and I have a much more limited amount of time, it's like, all right, I need to figure out what I can do, what makes sense, and then also what makes sense for the customer, and kind of figure out how we can best price that. So it's been a lot of trial and error. But I think I've really landed into just kind of like this is what my time is worth. This is what, my costs are as far as the business. And now I feel a lot more confident in how I'm pricing things. And in the beginning, I felt like I was just kind of throwing things together and seeing what stuck.
Yeah. Which is like its own learning experience in itself, and probably a healthy one, but it's hard because time is a quantitative measure, but everyone looks at it differently, right? And everyone sees their own time differently. And so people say like time is money and money is time, but people could look at the value of an hour very differently, just between two people. So how do you
Right.
how do you determine this is $50 versus 500? I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it
Lots of
was,
trial and error.
yes, definitely trial and error, and definitely just seeing, where the interest is, and kind of how long things take me to do, and how much I like really kind of valuing the cost of, what I need to bring in to even continue to be a full-time artist. So
Of
if I'm
course.
going to be doing these, like, what do I need to bring in, and how long does it take me to do each one? Like it was a lot of just figuring.
Figuring things out, right? So, can you share with the listeners what are some like surviving versus thriving moments of working for yourself, but working from home, and it's kind of all you?
Yeah. So, oh, there's so many in all aspects. Like there, I can so easily flip the switch from feeling like I'm surviving to feeling like I'm thriving. I would say work-life balance is tricky when you're working from yourself. It's easier in some ways now that I have children, or my daughter, because I'm kind of forced. Like I need to spend time with her. That's super valuable and important to me and my family. So it kind of sets more of the constraints. Whereas before Ian and I had kids, like I would just sometimes be like, take all the orders I can, and who
Yeah.
cares if I'm, working from 8 a.m. to midnight and then getting up and doing it again. So I kind of struggled with the balance of it, and figuring out, okay, what can I take on, and how do I not overwork myself, and overcommit to things. And having my daughter really helped just kind of give me that set, like, all right, you need to have a schedule. And it really is the time of when we have childcare. Like we're very lucky. Like my parents, both sets of grandparents are super helpful, and we do have some help that comes in. So it's very, you just work when they're here and you get it done, and I'm productive in that way. But then, so that's been a struggle, and it feels very much like I'm pulled in a lot of different directions,
Mm,
especially like since I am the one at home. I feel like my schedule is set up to be the most flexible, which can be frustrating in and of itself, because some days, like, I just want to be like, okay, I'm the one to leave, and like no one can interrupt me, and the
Yeah.
expectation is I'm home at 5.
Yeah.
But that's just
That's
not
so
the
real.
reality. And I wouldn't want it that way, because going into the Thriving, like, I love that I can just come downstairs and I'll get like an adorable toddler running up to me and like giving me a big hug, and like that's such a good mood booster to like go back up and start working again. So like I feel very lucky that I'm home with my daughter, but there are definitely times, like especially when I'm really trying to get things done, that it's like I so wish I was the one just leaving and not being interrupted and could just focus. So very much surviving and thriving at the same time. A lot of definitely more perks than downsides, but it comes with both, as does
Yeah.
everything.
That's good. Can you like walk us through a day in life?
Yeah. I mean, I am very lucky that I wear a lot of hats, but luckily I do have a husband who also wears a lot of hats. So I feel like the family and the home, like all of that is very shared. So that is a huge help to me. Um, But typically, in the mornings, my husband's off to work pretty early. So I'm full-time mom, start of the day. And then typically around like 9, I will get to go up to my studio and kind of focus in that. Um, and often that does come with some like bouncing back and forth, making sure the lunch is good for the baby and all that. But on a normal day when I have childcare, I do get to kind of focus from like up in my studio and working through with doing the illustrations. It's a lot of like booking weddings and responding to emails, going through doing all that. So I am lucky in that I'll get to do that till about late afternoon, and then I'm back to being full-time mom pretty much until she goes to bed, whether it's I'm watching her and my husband's cooking dinner or vice versa. Someone's doing something, and then we do bath time and putting her down together, which is super valuable to both of us. um and then if it's a busy time, like an ideal work day, I'll be done. But if not, then I'm back up in my studio in the evening and kind of just tying up loose ends and packing orders and getting things that I need to wrap up for the day, like done
Yeah.
after my daughter goes down. So it's
Okay.
it's much more segmented, I would say, than what I used to be able to do, is just like focus and work till it gets done. And now it's kind of like work with the time you have, get what you can done, and then go deal with the mom or home responsibilities and then come back to it. It's a lot of I'll get back to
Yeah.
that.
No, that's a very real response though, and probably a lot of compartmentalization. I
Yes.
imagine. I remember I saw an Instagram story on your page one time many months ago of your husband helping put labels on the orders, and I just thought it was hilarious and
Yes.
just like so important that like people say with being a parent. I don't have children, but it takes a village. It takes a village. But something like this, when you are full-time business, it is you and you are the artist. It takes a village to
Oh,
really make everything run.
yes. It takes a village, and my poor husband oftentimes, like, he is the village that I have. We are
He seems
very
great.
lucky. Yeah, he is very supportive and great. Um, but yeah, so we are lucky that our parents are involved and help us with childcare, but especially like I spoke in the beginning, how I was very much in survival mode, dealing with, first trimester symptoms. I would say my husband would probably say he was in survival mode in the opposite respect. He was doing, all the childcare, because it was also the middle of the holiday rush for me.
Yeah.
So I was just doing whatever I could to get my orders done and drawn and completed. But to his credit, there were so many nights where I was just like, it took all my energy to get the drawings done and printed, that most nights during the week, during the holiday rush, he would be coming home from work and doing, dinner and putting our toddler down, and then I would still be up in the studio, and he would come up and know, like, your next job is packing orders till we get
Yeah.
these done. So
It's like an
I give him a lot of
unspoken.
credit too. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it definitely takes a village, and when the orders are really coming through, like, it's amazing, very thankful for it. But yeah, I need the help. And he luckily is very willing to, come up and pack the orders. And luckily he's very trainable to
Good.
figure out how to do it.
Good. Easy learning curve.
Yeah.
How did you get started with the live? I love the concept of live illustration. I think it's just so beautiful that what an eye you must have, because I am not an artsy person at all. I have horrible handwriting. Like I can't even write notes on a paper and have it be legible. And so to have the eye that you probably have, you probably just see those scenes very differently. How did you start with the live weddings and really putting yourself out there? Because I imagine it's a lot of pressure.
It's definitely a lot of pressure. And so when I first started, I actually reached out to a girl I knew from my high school that I knew was getting married just from what I had seen on social media. And I asked her if she was interested, if I could come to her wedding and be a live painter. And she was more than willing to let me do that, which was so kind of her. And it actually worked out amazingly well for me because she had actually hired a live painter already. So
Oh,
she was like, I'm going to have her, she's already coming, doing the first dance. But if you want to do, an illustration of the venue and kind of add us in that respect, you're more than welcome to still come. And I was like, absolutely. And it was an amazing experience because not only was I showing up and getting the experience of actually being able to do a live wedding painting, but the artist that she hired, Rachel Lucia, I think is how you say her last name, she was so kind to me, really took me under her wing. It was the best thing I could ask for because I had a point of reference and someone that was so nice and could kind of show me the ropes and talk to me about her experience. And I've kept in touch with her and really enjoy her work. And she's a really valuable person for me in this space because I don't know a lot of people doing
yeah.
what I'm doing. So it was a very, kind of perfect moment for me to be able to do that. And then from there, just posting on social media, I got some traction as far as people hiring me for their weddings. But the guest illustrations, I would say that was one of my biggest, definitely in the moment surviving, but truly led to thriving because I had a girl reach out to me that she wanted these guest illustrations. And I don't know what made me say yes, but I'm obviously very thankful I did because I hadn't done that format before. At the time of her wedding, I was 5 weeks postpartum
Wow.
and didn't know what I was doing and was just like, sure, I'd love to be at your wedding. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah. It
And
gets me out of the house.
and so it was definitely one of those times where I was like, what did I sign up for? I don't know how to do this. I'm gonna have to pump. I'm figuring out how to be a mom. I don't know. But
Wow.
it was the perfect thing for me because it was just kind of trial by fire. Her family and everyone at the wedding was so kind. Everything went super smoothly. And from there, I got a lot of referrals and I booked a lot of weddings. And now it's a huge part of my business. So it definitely, it was a great moment for me that at the time I was like, what did I get myself into? But it just opened up so many doors. So I'm very thankful that I just kind of, blind confidence. I did have confidence in that moment that I could just figure it out.
Yeah, as we said in the beginning, I think that's something that we just innately kind of grow into entering our 30s, is that you're just blind confidence that you're based on experience. I've made it this far in life and I am still doing pretty fine. So
Right.
let me just
Yeah.
try. And then, I think a lot of people are age will have a fear of thriving because it will turn into failure.
Yeah.
And so they would rather be in a survival or not try than have people see them fail. Can you speak to just anything that you have done to help that confidence?
I can definitely speak to that. It took me, I think the biggest fear I had, and it's still there, is the putting myself out there aspect. Um, I am naturally more shy in the respect of that. Social media has been a big curve for me. I don't
Yeah.
mind posting things, but if you want me to talk to the camera, I don't know about that. I do now. I've gotten better about it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
for a while, it was like I would not do it. And I was so embarrassed. And like anytime I did it, I was like, oh my God, what are people going to think? And it definitely was that, it's something that's beneficial for the business and it's something that you need to do. But I was just like, it was a fear of judgment for sure. And I've definitely had the fear of failure and all those fears combined. I think you can really kind of go in a spiral of self-doubt. But I've kind of found that if you just don't let yourself think about it, like I am
Mm.
an overthinker to a T, but if I just kind of am like, all right, I get it. These are all the ways this is going to be or could be super embarrassing, but just like we've thought about it. Now just forget it and just do it. And it's never as bad as what I've made up in my head. So,
Yeah. Oh, that is so important. And I'm an overthinker too. And it is so easy to just like spiral. And I think just like anyone listening, if you like want to enter a thriving phase or you're really working towards that, you have to remove thinking and fearing what people will think and have opinions, because people will, and I promise you nobody cares as much as you do. To any listener that is maybe thinking about taking like their passion full time, what would you advise them, Erin?
I would say, I mean, if you have something that you feel passionately about and something that brings you joy to do, and you see an area that you can pursue that, do not let anything or any talk of self-doubt hold you back, because if it's going to fulfill you and make you happy, and it will then in turn make someone else happy. And like the world needs so much more of people just doing what genuinely makes them happy, because it will make you a happier person and it will make anyone who gets to experience the work you're doing a happier person. And I just feel like living your truth is so much more beneficial than trying to fit into any type of mold. So I would say just kind of don't let any of the outside noise or inside noise, even with your self-talk, get to you, and just kind of have the confidence and know that what you're doing is what you believe in, and just kind of, go full force at it.
Yeah, go full force, but start small, don't bite off more than you can chew. And like have fun. Like even me just like
Yes.
doing this podcast, like you just have to really just use your village. And I sent you a DM on Instagram. I was like, she probably won't remember me, but I still think about her art because my dad cried and that never
And
happened. So
that was so kind of you. And it absolutely made my day. I was like, you want to talk to me? Like, what? Like, I felt so flattered and it made my day. So, put yourself out there and you will make someone else's day by just doing what you like.
that's such good advice. And speaking of network, what is like the art community like? Like how do you, because you don't have like coworkers, unless maybe
Yeah.
your daughter, she's maybe like a part-time coworker, your husband. But how do you like put yourself out there? Because I imagine that in some ways it can feel lonely or really stressful. What does that community look like for you? And like, how do you advise anyone who's trying to be in your position to really find that community?
It's like what you said and what you did. For me, I've had a lot of success just, sending the DMs. Like, I don't have a lot of people in my area that are doing art or that I know of, but luckily the algorithm and kind of who
Yep.
I feel like you kind of get shown some people that are more local to you or are doing something similar to you. And I have a few girls that I just reached out to and asked questions in the DMs, and the majority of people are very willing to help someone, you know, share their knowledge and help someone do what they're enjoying doing. So I feel like if you reach out and ask the questions and show your appreciation for what they're doing, or express, what is valuable to you or what you admire that they're doing, people are
Yeah.
really receptive to kind of share information and talk to you. And so I do have, for me, my artist community is very digital. I don't have a lot of
Yeah.
local, but I have met a few girls. I have another girl, Brody B Studio in Hershey, which is fairly close to me and where I grew up. I've been able to connect with her over a lunch and really talk through, and being able to have people that, even if you don't see them all the time, that you can reach out to and be like, hey, how are you handling this? Or like, how would you handle
Yeah.
this type of client situation, is so helpful. And it's also super helpful to just build that network up for referrals too. Like if I can't do a wedding, like I know I can send them to Rachel, or if Brody does a lot of wedding illustrations, and that's just not something I do. So if I get
Okay.
inquiries for that, I'm like, oh, why don't you check out this person? And it's really helpful as far as, you know, still maintaining that client relationship, but also giving yourself someone that you can talk to whenever you have questions, because doing it without people to lean on or just bounce ideas off of, like, it is very isolating, and you do feel like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, what do I do if
Yeah, and
it's
even
just you?
Yeah, and even if it's a digital community, that can really like empower that work-life balance that you were like talking about in the beginning that you didn't have, but now you thrive in your own way, because you can maybe just like grab a lunch. Maybe it's not every month, but you at least have someone digitally that you can text and say like, "Hey, what supplies do you have for this?" Or, you know, "What iPad did you buy next?" Or like whatever it is. Again, I'm not an artsy person, so
No, you're
whatever.
exactly right, though. Yeah.
There's definitely people out there to help you, and I think people are warmer when there's already a mutual interest of passion. Anyone, I think, with a good heart wants to, you know, share their wealth of knowledge because you have similar knowledge, pretty
Yeah.
much.
And the perks of social media, it makes it very accessible, I feel like, to find other people with similar interests as you. So just reach out, I would say.
Are there things that you kind of miss about like the corporate world, like PTO, or things where you could kind of turn off that it would almost force you to thrive or just step away in a little bit, or thrive, help you step away?
Yeah. Oh, I definitely miss things about the corporate world. I think the sense of community that you have going into an office, and just even if you're talking to coworkers, even if you're not super close with them, just having an adult conversation where you're like, hi, how was your day? How was your
Yeah.
weekend? Like, whatever, that social connection. I primarily talk to a computer and a toddler until my husband gets home. So I definitely miss having my coworkers, and having that social interaction is huge. But also the PTO, especially in times like where you're not feeling well, being able to take time off and not just be setting yourself up for a busier day the next day. Like, when you're in a corporate environment, like, you do have people, often you're on a team where if you can't really, if you're sick for a day or something, it's not the end of the world, and someone else can kind of step in and help with little things. And then, you know, you can get back to it the next day. Whereas if I'm sick or our childcare is sick, um, I still have to do all the same work. It's just getting pushed to the next day, or I'm, you know, working at night to kind of make up the time. So I
Yeah.
definitely miss having more of a team and having a support system in that respect to kind of help pick up the slack on days where either you want to take a vacation or you can't be there or you're sick or something like that. Having someone else to kind of lean on would be huge. But you know, I wouldn't trade it.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, what would you give advice to any listener that is maybe thinking about doing this, about maybe any boundaries that you've like developed that really like help you in your space?
I would say kind of what we've talked about as far as the time management, the boundaries of, for me, it's very important for me and my husband and my daughter. Like, when we're doing dinner and bath and bedtime, like, that really is an important time for us as a family. And that has been helpful for work life balance and just being like, okay, I need to turn off at this time. Like, this is my family time, and, you know, I'm not negotiating that. But also the boundary of like learning to say no, because especially at times when I'm super busy, if I'm getting a bunch of inquiries or a lot of people, I feel like, are in such a mode of like prime delivery and want things, you know, super fast. And I get a
Yeah.
lot of DMs that are like, hey, I just saw this, like, my wedding is in 2 weeks. Like, can you just fit me in? Things like that, where normally, like, a few years ago when I was getting started, I'd be like, okay, like, I'll figure out how to make it work and, you know, fit you in. And getting this client is more important than kind of the balance that I've set with my time. But now I've learned a lot of how to say no, or say like, this is the lead time I need. Like, I'm sorry, like, I just can't do it. So learning to
Yeah.
say no has been huge for me, and just knowing what I can do, and not overcommitting myself has been, I'm still learning how to do it, but
Yeah. No,
that's been
that's great
something that
advice.
is very important.
Yeah, that's really important. So kind of just like as a closing, what are areas or things are you looking forward to thriving in 2024?
I am looking forward to I have a lot of live weddings that I'm excited about in some new and different places. So I'm very excited to do those. I've been doing a lot of acrylic golf paintings, which is new for me that I'm excited to have a collection of those coming out. So just experimenting with a lot of different stuff. And then lastly, I guess meeting our new baby. Very excited
So
for.
exciting. Very varying different things, all very important and exciting and different.
Yeah.
Any last words of just like insight, advice, things that you would just like love to share with the audience about you, your work, or anyone trying to, do a similar path as you?
I would say, I mean, kind of what our theme of, yeah, I feel like our conversation is just kind of go after it. If it's something you're excited about, make sure to fit it in your life. And it will be difficult and you will definitely feel like you're surviving a lot of the time, but the overall feeling of thriving that you get from it and just like the peace of knowing that you're living a life that fulfills you is so worth it. So I would say just go after it.
Yeah, that intuition, like we talked about, don't ignore it. It's there for a reason. Erin, thank you so much. It has been absolutely amazing having you on the Surthriving podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time, especially at night, to do this. And I'm really excited just for listeners to enjoy this episode and feel inspired. And then also reach out to you for things. I have shared the work that you have done as my parents' gift to friends and family, and they all love it. So hopefully we can spread a little clientele as well and get some familiar names of mine in your cart.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a great conversation. So I thoroughly enjoyed it and I genuinely it made my day when you reached out to me. So I'm very happy to be here and have had this talk with you. And yeah, if anyone wants to find me, my Instagram and TikTok, my social is erin.edith. So feel free to reach out to me there, or you can find me on Etsy at EE Illustration, or my website is erinedith.com.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Surthriving. I hope you took some helpful information away from it and are feeling inspired. If you know someone who is surviving or thriving and would benefit from hearing this episode, feel free to send it over to them. Remember, sharing is caring. To leave a review or rating of the show, head to Spotify to follow, rate, and let me know what you think. All information about today's episode, guest, and podcast social handles will be in the description, so don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date.